Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. We're meeting now after a long break. Hope you all enjoyed your Diwali holidays and had a good occasion, and you're all geared up for the next chapters now. You didn't get notes. Notes have been uploaded. I have uploaded all the notes on supply, place of supply, and everything, which is the notes you have not received. Up to chapter 4, everything has been uploaded.
The student can also view the notes.
Is it uploaded, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Srushti, please check up to place of supply, all the notes has been updated. Yes, yes, Hardik. In the meantime, you can ask your doubt by the time Srushti checks the notes part.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, three small clarifications I want, sir. Sir,
Hmm.
first one, sir, hotel accommodations are provided by trust. Is it exempted from GST?
Hotel accommodation by a trust, that limit of 1,000 is only applicable. If anything is provided within the vicins of the presence premises, जो है, that clause will apply, which is any accommodation within the presence of a religious community. Only
Yes,
that
sir.
will be exempted.
Yes, sir, in relation to that only, but no limit is written. That's why I was asking.
Oh, no, there is a limit. Let me just share that with you.
Sir, only for shops and rooms are written. Hostel is not there.
Yeah, only for rooms, not a hostel. So either you call that room, it's a hostel itself as a room, then it becomes a different thing. So they've only said for rooms.
So, sir, hostel, any limit, it is exempt.
Hostel, uh, hostel is now clarified, but there was a contentious issue. Few people were treating that hostel also is for use of residential purposes, and residences, whatever you use your house for residential, that was exempted. So
Yes.
hostel, there was no specific category. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So since you use your hostel for residential purposes, you can say that yes, even hostels were exempted, but the ground reality is for some hostels, they used to charge GST as well.
Okay, sir. For some hostels, we charge GST. So, sir, it will be given in the question like what the scenario is.
Yeah. So you can say that based on the clarification. So for till by the time you write your exams, you will get this statutory update, right?
Yes, sir.
In the statutory update, you will get this that hostel accommodations have been exempted specifically, and there is a circular clarifying that. So since
Yes.
that circular will apply, you can say that based on this circular, hostel accommodation is exempted.
Okay, sir. And sir, second one is, sir, in hotel managed by the charitable trust, there is an exemption limit written. Sir, what is that exemption?
Uh, Repeat that.
Sir, hospitals managed by charitable trust, they are
Mhm.
exempted up to a certain limit. It is written
Okay.
in the study material, but that limit is not specified.
Exemption available to healthcare, right? Hospitals which is managed by charitable trusts also.
Yes,
It
sir.
will be in line with healthcare services. Okay.
Okay.
So whatever exemption we will read for healthcare services, that will apply to healthcare services managed by either private bodies or charitable trusts. Okay. And
Okay.
as such, the limit is there is just a saying that the exemption is there for everybody, but now slowly they are trying to bring it under taxable by saying that if your room rent is more than 5,000 rupees, then it will be flexible.
So, like, sir, we studied in hotels, tariff rate, normal.
Correct. Something like that. Yes.
Okay, sir. And sir, if sir, I am providing any services to a charitable trust as a professional who is registered, then it is taxable. But sir, if I am not registered, then
If you are not registered, then you will not charge any GST.
so no GST will be charged by any of the parties.
Correct. Correct. No GST by both of you.
And sir, in case of rooms, there is a certain limit, like a 999, and above that it will be taxable. But sir, if the charitable institution provides a room to an unregistered person, then also above the limit it won't be taxable, no?
No, if charitable organization is charging more than 999 rupees for room rent,
Yes, sir.
right? Then the recipient is registered or unregistered does not matter.
They have to pay GST.
They will have to charge GST and pay it. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Mahi and Shruti, can you please check because the notes have been uploaded. Are you seeing at the right place, or you can reach out to Board of Studies because I've just got a confirmation saying that the notes have been uploaded. Okay. Very nice. Okay, so what we were studying in the last class was on place of supply we completed. After place of supply, we also moved to the exemptions. So we were majorly dealing with the exemptions in our last class, and we went through the exemptions just to have a recapitulation of what kind of exemptions we have covered. We'll go to the important pointers so that we can get through it. We understood the basic of exemptions, the section which is relevant, right? Because we know 9 is charging section, 9 is supply, and 7 is supply, 9 is the charging section, and then section 11 is for the exemption. 11 says that you can give a exemption either through a notification or through a special order. And such notice or special order, if you feel such any kind of amendment has to be made, or you need to have a clarification, then you can insert an explanation how you can do it by a notification. If you do it within 1 year from the date of this the original notification or the order, then the impact of this explanation which you will insert now, if it is within 1 year from the date of the original notification or the order, then it will have a retrospective effect, which means that it will be from the original notification date itself. But if you insert any explanation after 1 year, then it will not have effect of retrospective implication. It will be effective from the date you issue this notification. Okay. Then we went into what kind of exemptions can be there. There could be absolute exemption or a conditional exemption. If it is absolute, which means it is unconditional, then you don't have an option to say that no, I will pay taxes and claim input tax credit. When there is a unconditional exemption, which means that you should not charge GST at all, it is a exemption without any conditions, right? So you have to follow it. But if it is a conditional exemption, then then it will become an optional thing, because there, if you are not in a position to fulfill those conditions, then you can charge GST and claim the input tax credit. And the second option you have in optional exemption is that you should not charge GST and fulfill those conditions. Uh, Other aspects, what we went is we discussed on the charitable activities. We said that what is a charitable entity? It is an entity which is firstly registered under 12AA or 12AB of the Income Tax Act, and it should carry on these specific activities. It should be carrying on the activity of public health, advancement of religion, spirituality, or yoga, advancement of any educational programs, or preservation of environment, watersheds, forests, or wildlife, And that was the activities which will become exempted. Now, another exemption was running old age home where the value is up to 25,000 rupees for whom, if it is for residents about 60 years of age and you're collecting this consideration for boarding, lodging, or maintenance, then it will be exempted. Now, advancement of education programs, if you take a parallel to that, then you'll see that uh, the educational program skill development relating to abandoned, orphaned, or homeless children, physically, mentally abused, or traumatized people, people who are prisoners, then persons above 65 years of age residing in rural areas. So here it is 60 years for running an old age home, but for advancement of skill development and educational programs, the limit is 65 years and it should be in a rural area. That is very important. Okay. Then we saw renting of presence of a premises that up to 999 per day. If it is a room, if it is a marriage hall or a Kalyan Mandapam, up to 999 rupees per day. And if you're letting out shop, again 999 rupees, 9,999 rupees per month. Okay. So this is what will be exempted. And then training and coaching, if a charitable organization is providing training and coaching in recreational activities relating to exempted. But if anybody else who is not a charitable organization, they are providing recreational services in arts and culture, that will become completely exempted. Okay. Then the service of a rehabilitation professionals. Now, if this rehabilitation professional provides services to a organization which runs a charitable organization, it could be that, or it could be a medical institution or an educational institution. To any of these organizations, if they provide rehabilitation services, that is also exempted. Then religious pilgrimage conducted by whom? By KMVNL and the Hajj committee is exempted. Here, another small one exemption is Pandit services. That is, services of a person who provides religious ceremony is also exempted. So this was on the point on charitable and religious activities. Sir, give examples of mandatory and optional. Yeah. So, if the condition says that, okay, charitable organizations don't have to charge, then they will not charge. That is a unconditional, correct? That will become mandatory. Now, we can see some other exemptions where they say exemption is there provided that um, say like restaurant services now instead of 18% they have to charge 5%, which means what, to the extent of 12% it is exempted. But then there is a condition there that you should not claim input tax credit, so you should charge lower rate, but the condition is you should not claim your input tax credit. Now if somebody is having huge input tax credit, will he also be liable to charge GST at 5% and not claim the credit? No, because it is a conditional exemption. So he can opt for saying that, okay, I will charge GST and I will claim input tax credit. But we will see that nobody does that because nobody wants to get into the litigation. But anybody willing to fight it out, they can say that, okay, I will, it is a conditional exemption which is being given. So I will not abide by it because I'm not in a position to fulfill those conditions. Okay. So then the next exemption which we went through was in terms of charitable is done. Then next was agricultural services. In agriculture services, we understood that agriculture is not restricted to what agriculture activities we see, the farm, the growing of the plants, growing of the fruits, growing up of the cereals and things. It is much beyond it. The agriculture activities includes also activities relating to cultivation of plants or rearing of life form of animals. So that is also considered as part of the agricultural services. Okay, so services relating to cultivation of plants and rearing of live forms of animals except horses. Okay, horse is not treated under the cultivation of animals, because for other animals, when you cultivate, you are using it for agricultural purposes, but horse is mostly for commercial purposes. So except horse, any other animals which you are rearing is treated as a agricultural activity. And then in terms of agriculture land, agriculturalist firstly is not required to take any registration because he will supply only exempted services. Now, if he starts supplying some taxable services, what could be that example? That is when he has a farmhouse, when he has a warehouse, that if he rents it out and he's getting commercial rent for that, that will become taxable. But otherwise, if he's a purely agriculturist who's doing only farming, then he is not required to take registration. Okay. Then what else is exempted? Renting of vacant land. You have a vacant land and you are renting it off for agricultural purposes with or without structure, that is also exempted. And then renting of agriculture machineries, that is also exempted. Okay. The agricultural operations include cultivation, harvesting, threshing, plant protection, or testing. These are the agricultural operations which we do at the farm. These are exempted. But secondary activities, which is done at the not at the farm level, but at the factory level, okay, those activities are not treated as exempted. And in warehousing, earlier we had fumigation. Now fumigation is also taxable. It is not no more exempted. Warehousing of minor forest produce, warehousing of agriculture produce, and warehousing of cereal, pulses, fruits, and fruits, nuts, and vegetables is exempted. Then, in relation to this itself, if there is any APMC, that is agriculture produce market, they are charging something, or there is a commission agent, that is also exempted. And loading, unloading, packaging, and storage of agriculture produce or rice, that is all this loading unloading activities is exempted, followed by transportation of agriculture produce by a GTA, that is also exempted. Okay. Tea powder from tea leaves is a secondary activity, right? Sir, horse used for other than racing purposes. What can you just imagine? Because I'm telling you the logic behind this. Most of the time it is used. So the words they've used is except horse. So horse in any form will be taxable itself. It will not be exempted. Okay. Then the after agriculture services, what did we read? We read on the educational services. Yeah, we were somewhere here. I think we had read this. We will have to go through the uh, examples of the circulars in this regard now. Okay. Educational services is any services provided. Till now, what did we see? Services provided by these organizations. So services provided by educational services, educational institution is definitely exempted. So any service provided by educational institution to its students, faculty, and staff, or for conduct of entrance examination against entrance fees, that is also exempted. So education is exempted and conducting of entrance examination is also exempted. Now, this is the services which an educational institution provides, but what service we provide to the educational institution, that can also be exempted. Now, what are those services? They are specifically mentioned into various categories. One is transportation of students, faculty and staff, transportation law, the bus charges, the van charges, that is exempted. Catering services, catering services provided to any, including any midday. So it's not restricted to midday meals. It says that including midday meals. Apart from that, any other scheme also which you have, and you are a caterer providing food to a school, that then you don't have to charge GST. That is exempted. Then security or cleaning or housekeeping services, that is also exempted, which means so any security and cleaning person who's doing any service, they are all exempted up to what level? Up to preschool or higher secondary school level. After that, services relating to admission to such institutions is also exempted. Then supply of online educational journals or practice or periodicals beyond higher secondary school will be exempted. Okay. Then we understood what is educational services. We understood that it is includes vocational activities also. Okay. Approved because the definition of educational institution says that educational institution means any institution providing service by way of a preschool education, education as a part of curriculum, or education as a part of an approved vocational education course. Yes, mess services, Anganwadi also will be exempted. Okay, clear on educational services. We were somewhere finished this year, and we were trying to read the various circulars which is given in this regard. Entrance exam. Now, in any conduct of entrance examination by the authority board set up by the central government or state government, that will shall be treated as an educational institution for the limited purpose, because during the entrance examination it is not conducted by a particular school or college, it is conducted by the university. So for that limited purpose, when they are doing any entrance examination, okay, then it will be exempted. Okay. Then GST shall not apply to any fees or amount charged by such boards for conduct of such examinations. So since that boards will be treated as educational institution for the limited purpose, so any fees what they charge will also be exempted. Then GST is also exempted on input service relating to admission or conduct of examination, or any online testing services, any result publication, full activity, all of that will be exempted. Then services related to input services relating to admission is also exempted. Then GST is applicable, which means it is not taxable for services provided by such boards, namely providing accreditation services. So accreditation services, you have to get your college accredited, saying that this is one of the best colleges. You will call a accreditation agency. They will come check your operations, and then they will give you a certification. Once they give that certification, you can use it as a marketing tool. So when that board comes, appoint some people to do this testing, you have to be prepared that yes, they will provide something. They'll give us a report for which we have to pay the charges for it. That is not exempted. Okay. So any kind of a service provided by boards, namely of providing accreditation, then GST is applicable. Okay, so what else was the clarification here? Uh, Food services at educational institutions. So any mess or canteen, if it is providing services to its student, faculty, and staff, because the first heading said, right, saying that any kind of food which is provided to its students, faculty, and staff, then it is exempted. But if the catering services are provided to anybody else other than educational institution, then it will be outside, because if catering services are provided by anybody other than educational institutions, okay, then it is liable to GST. Affiliation of institution by NAC, correct. Those are the services which will be chargeable to GST. So we understood the food services and the mess and canteen services. Supply of food in Anganwadis and schools, again, it's exempted because Anganwadis are for very young kids. So Anganwadis and schools are all treated as preschool education. प्राइवेट स्कूल्स की केटरिंग, हाँ, जब भी प्राइवेट स्कूल्स केटरिंग को बोलते कि आप हमें खाना प्रोवाइड करो हमारे बच्चों के लिए फॉर द स्टूडेंट्स, देन इट विल बी एग्जेम्प्टेड, प्रोवाइडेड No, provided that yes, they are providing educational services. Now, few clarifications are there that boarding schools, matlab where you go, residential schools, would say that residential schools, their services is exempted because the primary service is education and stay is ancillary. So boarding school is also liable for exemption as per educational services. Then dual qualifications, one which is recognized, one which is not recognized. Then in that case, the one which is not recognized and the one which is recognized for exemption, both are clubbed, right? Because you'll have only one document. So when you have two qualifications given by a college, one is taxable, one is exempted, it will be mixed supply. So there is a risk that that exempt supply which you treat on a educational services that can get taxed because the mixed supply says that whatever is the highest rate has to be applied on the total supply itself. Then any IIM long-term courses will be exempt, but any short-term courses they have like weekly plan or a weekend plan and they take up some specific topics that on which you have to pay charges. So that is a participation certificate that is taxable, not exempted. Then fees charged from prospective employers for campus recruitment. Where there's one college and it has some students, it wants some placement of its students. So it calls some companies and companies pays for coming to the college and doing the recruitment. Correct. Now that fees charge will be taxable. It is not related to healthcare. It's not related to educational institution directly. Then next is any kind of a entrance fees is exempted. However, the entrance fees will be exempted and the certificate which is given, which is called as eligibility certificate, that is also exempted. Then transfer certification. After you finish your school or college, you get a transfer certificate. That transfer certificate is exempted. Then maritime course are approved by the DJ of Director General of Shipping. That is also exempted. Dual qualification exempted supply is also taxable now because of big supply. Yes, when there's a dual qualification, one it's just taxable because it is not recognized under the Indian laws, then that will become taxable. Once that gets taxable and you're charging consolidated fees, if you're charging separate fees, then you can say that fees is for one portion of the fees is for charging for educational institution which is providing accreditation outside India. But one which is provided by the Indian entity that will be taxable. Pilot coaching, yes, that is also part of the educational institution. It's a part of educational institution itself because you're getting a degree which is recognized by law. So pilot coaching will be liable, which will be exempted. Will not be liable, it will be exempted. Okay. Sir, if the school has a canteen area, gave their space for agreement to ABC Catering to provide food to the school, then it is taxable since the school is not directly providing canteen services or it is exempted for primary children. So, in your case, Praveen, that canteen is providing, if the canteen provides some food to the school authorities, to the children, then it will be exempted. But if they are providing catering services to any other person, okay, then it will be taxable. Clear, Praveen? Any other person like teachers also? Yeah. Which point, Manvi? let's get into healthcare. Before that, भावना, एक्सप्लेन द पॉइंट मारीटाइम कोर्स. हाँ, जो डायरेक्टर जनरल ऑफ शिपिंग होता है वो एक कोर्स ऑफिस ऑफर करते हैं विच इज इन द नेचर ऑफ शिपिंग, हाउ टू शिप, हाउ टू चेक द accuracy, how to check where are we landing, which direction we are going. So that is the course which is given by Director General of Shipping. Now that is also, they also get a degree and then they get posted. So it is a course which is recognized by law. Since it is recognized by law, then it will be exempted. Mess facility up to higher secondary school is exempted, but it does not matter if it is given to student or teacher. Correct. Up to higher secondary school, it will be exempted. But generally, that mess will be for the children also, right? So it says services provided to school educational institution is exempted. So it could be children or the teachers because all of them together make a educational institution. Okay. So shall we go to the healthcare services or is there any more doubts? Okay. No more doubts there. Okay. Now we'll go to healthcare services. What is healthcare services is defined. So let's get into the definition first. So definition is says that service by way of healthcare services by services provided by whom? By a clinical establishment. Okay. So healthcare services provided by a clinical establishment, an authorized medical practitioner or paramedics. Clinical establishment, healthcare services provided by a clinical establishment. Clinical establishment would mean any kind of a doctor services, any hospital. All of that is treated as a clinical establishment. So service by a veterinary doctor. First is services by way of healthcare by clinical establishment, and authorized medical practitioner or paramedics is exempted. Services provided by way of transportation of patient in an ambulance other than A above, that is also exempted. So if you see ambulance, if they're charging something, then you don't have to pay GST on that. Okay, because their charges they will charge, but GST is not leviable. However, since services provided by a clinical establishment by way of providing room. Okay, now there is a exception here saying that, okay, boss, healthcare services is all exempted, but they have brought in an amendment saying that services provided by a clinical establishment by way of providing room other than a intensive care unit or a critical care unit or a intensive cardiac care unit, having room charges exceeding rupees 5,000 per day to a person will not be exempted, which means that if a hospital you're going, okay, in a hospital you're admitted to a ICU. What is ICU? When you're really serious, your patient is admitted to the ICU. Now, this patient who is admitted for ICU per day, they are charging 6,000 rupees. So, will it be taxable or exempted? Yes, if there are small clinics which are run by the doctors and they are running only outpatients, that is also exempted because clinical establishment does not mean only hospital. It includes the clinics also. So it could be any clinical establishment. It could be a small or big. All of that is a clinical establishment itself. Okay. So my question here was that if a person is admitted to a ICU, okay, then my question was a person is admitted to the ICU and the hospital is charging 6,000 rupees. Will it be taxable or exempted? So most of you are saying, sir, it is taxable. Okay. But Hardik has now said that not taxable. Why is he saying that it is taxable and not taxable is because any services by way of healthcare services by a clinical establishment, all of this is fine. Where when it says that services provided by a clinical establishment by way of providing room other than a ICU, CCU, or intensive, and where the care, okay, other than a ICU, CCU, where the room charges is more than 5,000 rupees, their GST is applicable. There is no limit for ICU, CCU, or NICU because the patient is already there. Okay, and if you're charging a higher fees, then if you say I'll charge GST also on that, you will get heart attack there itself. Okay, so that said that okay, if you are treating some patients in the ICU, CCU, ICCU, or NICU, leave that whatever is being charged because they know that there the charges is definitely going to be high, right? So CCU, ICU, वगैरह में there is no limit. They can charge anything. But for room charges, if it is 5,000 rupees or above, then that will be taxable. Sir, in cashless treatment, we'll come to that. What happens in case of cashless treatment? Will insurance company get ITC or only patient? There'll not be any ITC, no, sir, because they are not getting any GST will be charged by the hospital unless it is above 5,000 rupees room charges. If it is more than 5,000 rupees room charges, then they will charge GST. GST, who is the service receiver? The patient is the service receiver. And when it is insurance company who is paying the consideration, insurance company is paying the consideration. So then they will have to pay it and claim the credit. So in case of normal rooms or rooms for patient, attendance are for their family is taxable. If it is the case of more than 5,000. So generally what you see in a hospital, there are no separate charges for a non-patient. Saying that, okay, you will get one bed for the patient and that is the charges for non-patients. There will be some additional place which for which generally hospitals do not charge separately. Okay, so then there is no question of liability on that. Sir, 50,000 rupees per day. Okay, they charge so very high. So it is already high. So they don't want to make it further costlier and charge GST on that. If the room charges is 4,999, then not taxable because it says 5,000 and above. So if you charge 5,000 and above, then it will be taxable. Up to 4,999, it is not taxable. ICU, CCU are always exempted. Correct. Hospitals usually charge a package. That is true. But if it's a normal hospital, okay, then if they charge, even in the package also, they'll have to give a breakup saying that this is the room charges. So if that room charges is more than 5,000, then it become taxable. Okay, so we understood the definition of healthcare services. First thing what we missed out is first is our healthcare services of human beings, then services by a veterinary clinic in relation to healthcare of animals or birds. So if there is any kind of injury to animal and bird, you will also take them to a veterinary hospital. So that is also treated as a healthcare services. So healthcare relates to human beings, plants, and animals also. Okay. So we understood definition of healthcare services. Now let us understand the exemption. What all services of a healthcare will be exempted. So this chart will be helpful for us. Let me zoom this. Right. Services by way of healthcare service by a clinical establishment or a authorized medical practitioner or a paramedics is all exempted. Okay. So what all services? Services by way of a healthcare service by clinical establishment. Okay. So what is a clinical establishment? Includes any hospital, natural resources, or a natural nursing home, or a labs diagnostics, or a labs investigation. This person will not be. So these services are clinical establishment services. So hospital, nursing home, any laboratories, because they say that clinical establishment definition includes laboratories also. So you may generally feel that when you're going to a doctor, it is exempted, but no, when you go to a doctor, doctor writes a test, writes a X-ray or a scan to be done. Then you go to a laboratory, or it's also called as a diagnostic lab. So when you go to this laboratory, then if they are okay, any labs, you are giving the blood report. You are giving your blood, they will give the report. That is also exempted. So the clinical establishment healthcare needs to be very much affordable. So the government is giving exemption for the all the related services of clinical establishment. That's why in the definition, clinical establishment includes hospitals, natural homes, investigation, and nursing homes, diagnostic and investigation services. All of this will be considered as clinical establishment services. Next part is authorized medical practitioner. When there is a authorized medical practitioner and he is a providing services, which means that he is an individual doctor. He is an authorized medical practitioner. Now, this hospital providing is exempted. Doctor providing to the hospital or doctor providing services to the patients directly, both of them is also exempted. So, any authorized medical, okay, any authorized medical practitioner, if he is providing services to an individual, okay, authorized medical practitioner, which is a doctor services, when it is exempted if he is registered with any council of recognized system of medicine, right? We have allopathy, we have homeopathy, we have siddha, we have unani, so many kinds of medical practice. So when they are registered with any of these council, each of this, like Ayush is a council for yoga, then each body will be there for different types of practices. So registration with any of these council should be mandatory, and he should be a medical practitioner having requisite qualification. Not that like how we have in our CA course inter students. So will a inter cleared student be treated as a chartered accountant? No, right? Similarly, he is not yet a chartered accountant, he's a student. So similarly, authorized medical practitioner means a person who is having the requisite qualification and he should be registered with any of these councils. Then he is an authorized medical practitioner. And then the third kind, yeah, before that, there's a very relevant question. Sir, uh, doctor services provided to individual exempted. Yes. So all the doctors providing services to, they'll provide to individual, because healthcare who is taking a individual itself is taking. So individuals take services from a doctor. Doctor will not charge GST. Could be at a clinical establishment or at home. Anywhere it is exempted. Sir, if the blood tests are taken at home, then it is taxable, sir? No. Still, it is a diagnostic services. It is not taxable. It is exempted. in case of a company doing a medical test to candidates during recruitment process, they are also not taxable. Yes, because healthcare services could be to anybody. Now, when the healthcare services company is doing some medical test to the candidates, then it is also a healthcare service itself, because we have seen that healthcare services will include services. Then, so any medical tests done by the hospital to the newly joined employees, that is also exempted. Yeah, they check bloods, eyes, etc. Yes, that is also exempted, Praveen. Okay. So that was on the clinical establishment, authorized medical practitioner and paramedics. Now, what is the definition of healthcare services? That is also defined. It says that healthcare services means any service relating to diagnostic, treatment, or care of illness, injury, deformity, abnormality, or pregnancy, which means it should be either a clinical establishment or an individual doctor, and they should do service for what? Diagnostics or treatment. So, diagnostic means before getting any injury or before falling ill. To not fall ill, you are doing a diagnostic. So, that is called diagnostic. Then, if you're fallen ill, then the treatment has to be done. That is the second part. So, first is diagnostic, then treatment or grant of illness or care of illness, injury, deformity, abnormality, education, not education, illness, injury, deformity, abnormality, or pregnancy will all be covered under healthcare services. In what? In which system? In any recognized system of medicine, which is allopathy, yoga, naturopathy, Ayurveda, homeopathy, Siddha, and Unani, which means these are the medical practitioners in India. These types of practice you can do it. But if you have any foreign practice like Reiki, acupressure, Chinese medicines, these are all not Indian medical system. So they are not recognized. They will be taxable. Okay. Again, questions thing. Sir, what is deformity? Deformity means any kind of abnormality, like uh, a person who's not having proper legs. So he's not having legs to walk properly. So there is a deformity. So that is the example of deformity. And in case a company doing this, we have discussed medical camp organized by NGO and charge nominal fees. Yes, still that will be exempt. Correct. Okay. So healthcare services is exempted, and transportation of patients to and from the clinical establishment. So when you have to, under emergency, you have to send a patient to the hospital, right? So that means you're transporting the patient from your place to the hospital or bringing him back from the hospital to home through a ambulance. So they have not specifically said ambulance services. So they wanted to cover a bigger spectrum. They've said apart from ambulance, if any other transportation is there of transport of patients to and from clinical establishment is exempted. But it does not include hair transplant or cosmetic or plastic surgery. Why? Because this will not be treated as in par with your illness. Okay, so any kind of a hair transplant, cosmetic or plastic surgery will not be considered under healthcare services. So, if it is in relation to beautification, generally, why will you do a plastic surgery? For beautification. So, any kind of beautification services where it is not required by the doctor, he is not suggesting you, you yourself want to change the shape of your nose, you want to change the shape of your eyes. This is for beautification which you're doing, then it is taxable. But sometimes plastic surgery doctor also will suggest when in terms of a to restore or okay in terms of a restoration restrictive or anatomy or functions of the body. Matlab, if there is a person who is met with the accident and his anatomy of the face has got changed, there's a defect, there's an injury, and it's caused some trauma, any of these reasons, then if you're doing plastic surgery, then it will be exempted. Okay. Or if there's a person who's born itself with a cut lips. Now, doctor saying if you continue that, then you cannot continue eating it. So doctor is suggesting that yes, you have to get a plastic surgery. So in that cases, which is not meant for beautification, then it will be exemption. But if you're doing a plastic surgery for beautification, then that will be taxable. Plastic surgery because of an accident will be exempted. In case of fire burn, yes. Recently, Diwali ke time, we have seen that there is a lot of fire burns. People, kids are not bursting crackers properly. There is an injury on their eyes, injury on their mouth, right? Because of that, if they don't get this plastic surgery done, then it will affect their other parts of the body. Okay. When the doctor suggests that to bring the natural condition back into position wherein it is required in terms of any defect to restore the anatomy or make a restrictive functions of the body, then it will be exempted. Okay. Not need to prove this from the nature of the test itself, it will be known, Praveen. So, from the nature of the plastic surgery only, it will be known. Okay. Then services by veterinary clinic. This we have already seen the definition, right? Apart from this, any services by a veterinary clinic in relation to healthcare will be exempted. And you had the limit saying that, okay, all of this healthcare services will be exempted. But now they've brought in a limit saying that, okay, if your room charges, okay, other than in ICU, CCU, and ICU, if their room charges is more than 5,000 per rupees per day, then that is taxable. If it is less and the room is say shared room, then it'll be less costlier. It'll be only 1,000 rupees. So that will be exempted. If it is double sharing, then the room rent will go little high. And if it is fully luxury, then it will be very high. Correct. So if the room charges, based on the room charges, it is decided whether GST is payable or no. If the room charges is very high, then GST will be payable. So then services by veterinary clinic is exempted. Now there were two exemptions related to healthcare which I've striked off to bring to your notice that if you get any questions on this which is related to healthcare is now taxable. What are they? They are operation. Like if you go to a hospital, you'll see that the waste or the blood stains or the cotton is not thrown through a normal dustbin. Correct? They are thrown away in a specific colored dustbin. Why? Because whatever waste is being generated by a hospital, they cannot just dispose it off in a waste bin. Okay, they will have to do a biomedical waste treatment because these are hazardous. So they will have to do the recycling of it in a proper way, or they have to discard it in a proper way. That's why they hire the services of a biomedical waste treatment facility. What do this waste treatment facility do? They will collect the waste from you and go and dispose it according to the way how the law says to dispose it of. Now, to collect the waste and dispose it off, the biomedical waste treatment facility person, they will charge some charges, say for the waste which I'm collecting from the hospital. Monthly, you have to pay me 5,000 rupees. On that, also, it was part of the healthcare services, right? Indirectly. So there was an exemption for that. Now that has been removed. So when a biomedical waste treatment facility comes and collects the waste, they will charge GST to the hospital. Okay. Then another thing which was also exempted was any blood banks, not normal blood banks. Normal blood banks, they don't charge anything, right? Normal blood banks will be exempted, but cord blood banks, which means that when a child is born from the umbilical cord, they collect the pure form of blood, which is called as cord blood. Now, this cord blood is stored and can be used at a later point of time to cure some diseases. Now that services by those cord blood banks were also exempted. Now that exemption is withdrawn and that is also taxable. Even if ICU room charges more than 5,000 taxable, no. If ICU room charges more than 5,000, there is no limit. It is exempted. Normal room charges, if it is more than 5,000, then it is taxable. Because I'll just tell you the wordings, what is being used. It says, nothing in this entry shall apply to the services provided by a clinical establishment by way of providing a room other than a ICU, CCU, and ICU, having room charges exceeding rupees 5,000 per day to a person receiving healthcare services. It says, other than ICU. So normal room charges, if it is more than 5,000, then it is taxable. So if the room does not contain any necessary life support, what do you mean does not contain necessary life support? It can be a normal room with life support or without life support. If it is in a hospital, if it's in a clinical establishment, okay, and if it is not providing any life support, still there will be collecting room rent. So that will still be considered. You'll have to consider that amount. If it is less than 5,000 exempted, if that is more than 5,000, then it become taxable. Stem cells, exactly, Sainath. Stem cell cord blood bank is the same thing. And we say stem cells from the cord blood bank, from the cord blood, they take off the stem cells. That is what is called as a cord blood or stem cells. Both are used interchangeably. Okay. Then there is a circular which clarifies various aspects, which says that was room rent to inpatients is exempted, because why you are going to the hospital room not to stay there to get the healthcare services, and the doctor has suggested that you have to stay here. So for that purpose, you are taking the room, so that room rent to inpatients is exempted. Senior doctors or any consultants, that is any healthcare professional, individual healthcare professionals, like how we had seen here, that it is an authorized medical practitioner. Now that authorized medical practitioner providing services to the hospitals, right? You are paying to the hospital is paying to the doctors. Generally, what do they do? Doctors may be employees, doctors may not be employees. When they are visiting doctors, they are not employees of the hospital. They will only charge some consultation charges to the hospital. Hospital will charge to the patient. So that services provided by the doctors to the hospitals, that is also exempted, because still they are providing same healthcare services itself. And then the amount which is charged by hospitals including retention money and fees to doctors, is all exempted because ultimately both of them are providing healthcare services. The value, they will keep the margin in the hospitals, but still they are also providing ultimately healthcare services. Food to inpatients is a composite supply because some hospital have this facility that any patients who staying here, we will provide them food also and we will charge them also, right? Now, you don't have an option to say no, you have to take food from there itself. Outside food, not allowed. So, it is in the nature of composite supply. What is the primary supply? The primary supply is healthcare services. So, since the healthcare is exempt, the food to inpatients also becomes part of the healthcare services. The whole bundle, what is being charged, will be exempt. But now, if they provide outside caterer, the caterer who's providing food to the hospital, he will charge GST because there is no exemption. So the caterer who is bringing food for the patients, because hospital not prepare inside food. If they're preparing, fine. If they're not preparing, telling a caterer to prepare food and serve it to the patients, the caterer will charge. Now this caterer, if he provides services to unadmitted patients, which is attendance of the patients or patients who are not attending or not admitted to the hospital, then that will be taxable. Like visitors and attenders, they are not patients. There, if they are still saying, no, we need the food, you charge extra, that will become taxable. Because what is exempted is only healthcare services. Apart from healthcare, if you have anything else, that will become taxable. Then any service other than healthcare, which means in the hospital, they have some shops. They have the big auditorium where some colleges wants to use it. We will charge 50,000 rupees. Okay. That we cannot say that it is a healthcare services. It's all additional facilities that is all taxable. So renting of shops and auditorium is taxable. Then display of advertisement in the hospital. Some uh, medicine companies say that, okay, you please display our board. Just put a IDX ka banner. We will pay you 5,000 rupees for 15 days. So that is promotion of healthcare, but that is not a healthcare service. So that is taxable. So this is what the circulars are all clarifying. Apart from this, one more circular says that if there is any abnormality, then for which you are doing any IVF, that is also covered under healthcare service. This is a very important circular which has come in, which says that any abnormality or ailment of infertility is treated as a ART procedure, such as IVF, is covered under healthcare services. When the hospital canteen provides food for doctors and outpatients are taxable, correct? To doctors and outpatients, they are all taxable. Okay. Anything else in healthcare other than this? It's only a definition of healthcare. Then again, we saw that services of rehabilitation professionals, right? There, what we saw under health rehabilitation professionals providing services to a hospital or to educational institution will be exempted. Then cord blood bank is gone. Healthcare services is defined. Now another amendment was this what I had told that GST on services in form of assistive reproductive technology in vitro fertilization, which means people who are not able to conceive child, they go to a doctor and get this IVF treatment done. There is a circular that says that the abnormality, disease, or ailment of infertility is treated using this ART procedure. And this is clarified that these services by way of IVF are also covered under the definition of healthcare for the purpose of this above exemption. Sir, is this 5,000 limit also exempted for semi-ICU rooms? They've just told ICU rooms. Only ICU, CCU, NICU is all exempted. If it is semi-ICU, it will be treated as a normal room itself because it should be a proper ICU room. Semi-ICU will still be a normal room. If this semi-ICU is charging rent Above 5,000 rupees, it will be taxable. Below 5,000, it will be exempted. In case of insurance also, Hardik, that they're providing healthcare services just because instead of you paying, the payment is being made by the insurance company. So services provided by a hospital to the patient, payment made by insurance company, still it will be exempted itself. Hospital gets rent through letting out. That income will use for giving free services. Still, so what is the nature of service? They are giving renting out the premises, right? Ultimate objective might be providing free services, that is secondary. On that free service, they will not charge GST, but on that rent, what they're collecting, it's a commercial place, right? Commercial rental is taxable, no exemption available. So, Riddhi, that hospital getting rent through let out is taxable. Any more questions till now? Uh, Okay, so we'll take a early break now, uh, and we'll catch up in 10 minutes. It's around 3:40 now. By 3:50, we'll get back. Yeah, if hospital provided the spare for shoot of a movie for no consideration just to promote the name of the hospital. So you tell me, will it be taxable or no? Think of this. We'll come back after the break. So we can start. Okay. So the question what we left was, what happens if the hospital provides their space for a shoot of a movie with no consideration, just to promote their name? So is it taxable? Firstly, it is taxable because it is not a healthcare services. But to tax something, it has to satisfy the conditions of supply. Supply says that anything should be with consideration. So in this case, there is no consideration, so it is not taxable. And when there is a transaction between unrelated parties, there the question of valuation is not disputed. You have not collected anything, you have not collected. Simple. So no consideration, no GST. If collected, it is taxable. As I had said that if there is a consideration, then it will be taxable. Okay. So we covered healthcare services. Now let's go to government services, which is very complicated, but we'll try to again simplify this through the chart itself. Sir, if the consideration is less than the market value, see, you have to go to the valuation, or we have not covered the valuation, right? So there, when we go to valuation, you'll see that if there is a transaction between two unrelated persons, then the price, the transaction value itself is the market value. Because if you are collecting something less, there should be some kind of influence in the price which you have, because of which you're collecting less. Why are you collecting less? It could be for the reason that price is not the sole consideration. So when price is not sole consideration, then we will adjust the price and collect the tax. Correct? So in normal situation, if the consideration, if the transaction value is less, say when you are selling a shirt, you can sell for 500 rupees. If the customer is bargaining, you can sell for 450 rupees also. So does it mean that for the person for whom you have charged 450 rupees, GST is still payable on 500? No, GST will still be payable on 450 itself, because that is the price where the seller and buyer are negotiated and agreed at that. So when the seller and the buyer have agreed at the price, then the tax authorities cannot do anything about it. They will say that when the free trade economy, when the seller and buyer have negotiated a price, that is the transaction value. Okay. So government services. Okay. Okay. Still more questions. We can see in valuation. I don't want to break the flow. Yes. Perfect. Yes. Today, MCQs, we will try to do it because we have to cover all the exemptions. Then we have to do, but we will try to see how much MCQs we can cover up. Okay. Government services is very deep. So any services provided by the government. Okay. Firstly, when a services provided to a government, we'll cover that. Services provided to a government is very simple, because any pure services, that is, you're providing only supply of service, not supply of goods, that is called as pure services. So any pure services or composite of goods and services where the proportion of goods is only 25%. Okay. Excluding works contract. Works contract is construction, leave that works contract. Apart from works contract, if you're providing only pure labor services, you're providing any labor to the government, you're providing any service portion where the goods are procured by the government. Okay. Such services are you're providing any composite supply of goods and services where the value of the goods is less than 25%. Then it is exempted when it is any services in relation to Article 243G and Article 243W. What is 243G, 243W? This is the article of the Constitution which says that any kind of services which is done by the municipality, the state municipality or the local municipality services, they are covered under Article 243W, and the services of a panchayat is covered under Article 243G. So, to fulfill their obligations, a municipality, they may have to clean the roads, they have to upkeep them, maintain the parks, they have to ensure that the water and drainage system is maintained correctly. So, these are all the services of a panchayat in case of rural areas, and in urban areas, you will have the municipality services. So, these services, to fulfill these services, when you are providing services to a municipality or a panchayat, then pure services, that is 100% service, no goods, or a composite where 25% is goods involved. If a private party is providing to the central government, state government, local authority, or union territory, then it will be exempted. So pure services is exempted. That is point number one. Point number two is any services provided by one central government, state government, LA is local authority, UT is union territory. So from one central government, state government, local authority or union territory providing services to another central government, state government, local authority or union territory is exempted. So from one government to another government, within government services are also exempted. Okay. Exclusion from supply definition. Okay, this is a little complicated because from the supply definition, we had already said when the service of the government are in the nature of public authorities, then it is not a supply. So when the government is providing some in the supply definition, we said that services when the government is involved as public authorities, it is not a supply. So article then we have seen that Article 243 and 243G and 243W are no supply. And then there is a clarification which says that uh, there are two clarifications. One is articles activity under 243G and 243W. That is, any municipality services and panchayat services are exempted. Then supply of alcoholic liquor license. Okay. When we know that alcoholic liquor is outside the scope of GST, then to give this license to the shopkeeper, the government conducts auctions and it gives the license. To give that license, it collects the consideration. Now, whether this consideration is taxable or no, it is given through a notification saying that supply of alcoholic liquor license is also not liable to GST. Okay. So that is on the primary aspect. Now, specific services, if we see, Department of Post was all exempted to when they provide from one government to another government. All of that is gone now. So, Department of Post providing any kind of services will be taxable and under forward charge. Earlier, it was confusing, but now it is all gone away. That Department of Posts, okay, Postal Department providing any kind of services will be taxable. Clear cut when you get in your question whether the Department of Post Services to another government will be taxable or exempt. Any kind of services by the postal authorities will all be taxable itself. Exemption is gone now. Then next is port or airport services, because ports are all handled by the government. Now, when you see the flights going to the runway, after they have taken the takeoff and landing, they will stay at the airport itself. For that, handling charges, staying charges, or parking charges, and within the airport, when the passengers also use the airport services, the government collects taxes. It should be included in the ticket price itself. Now, all of that is provision of services by the government. Okay. This is also services provided by the government that is also taxable under for forward charge mechanism. So here you may have a confusion why I've written FCM and RCM, because some government services come under reverse charge, some government services come under forward charge. So this, when I write FCM, it means the government itself will collect the GST. So air tariff control, air traffic control, flight hauling, rent from stores, all of this are the services provided by the government in terms of port and airport services. GST will be collected by them itself and paid to the GST department. Okay. So that is port airport services. Next is any kind of transportation services. Transportation services of goods and passengers is subject to GST, subject to exemptions, what we see under transportation. Like if you travel in a bus, the bus ticket, if it is non-AC, it will be exempted. But if it is taxable, then it will be under forward charge mechanism. So transportation services of goods or passengers, we will see separate transportation services. There you will get clarity. But now, when the government is providing any transportation services, it is liable to GST. Then renting of immovable property. Renting of immovable property, if it is to a registered person, if it is to a registered person, if I am registered and the government shop I'm taking on rent, then I will pay under reverse charge mechanism. But if it is to an unregistered person who is not registered under GST, then it will be under forward charge mechanism. Okay, this we had seen even under our RCM part on uh, the chapter of RCM, we had covered this. Under the chapter of levy, we had covered this. So renting of immobile property, if it is to a registered person, then the recipient will pay under reverse charge. Otherwise, if it is to an unregistered person, how will he pay? He cannot pay. There, the government itself will collect GST from him and pay it to the GST department. Okay, so that is in respect of port, airport services, transportation services, and renting of immobile property. Now, other services, okay, are services when they are provided to a business entity, then it will be under reverse charge mechanism. Okay. If it is to a business entity, then it is under reverse charge. Then it also has some exemptions. What exemptions? If the annual turnover of the receiver is less than the registration limit, then it is exempted. If the annual turnover is more than the registration limit, then if it is government, then it is exempted. If it is a non-government entity, again, you have to check if the consideration is less than 5,000 or more than 5,000. If the consideration is less than 5,000, again, it is exempt. If the consideration is more than 5,000, then it is liable to reverse charge. Okay. So I'll just explain this again, that all other services, apart from specific port, postal, transportation, any other services which the government is providing to a private party, then if it is providing to a business entity, it is generally under RCM. Then they say there are certain exceptions. What they say, if you're not registered and your your turnover was below the registration limit, then any services which you're receiving from the government is exempted. You don't have to pay anything. But in case your annual turnover was more than the registration limit, then you have to see whether you are government, like a police providing services to a MLA. Both are government. So there, from one government to another government, exempted, correct? So there it will become exempted. But if it is a non-government entity, like a individual, and there he will have to check when he's getting any services, he has to check the consideration. If the value is more than 5,000, less than 5,000 rupees, it will become exempt. If the value is more than 5,000 rupees, then you will have to pay under reverse charge. So basically, if you're receiving any services from the government, you have to see your status. If you're registered, you will have to pay. If you're not registered, then you have to see if you're crossing the limit, if you're crossing the registration limit. Okay. And then the value of the service is more than 5,000, then you will pay reverse charge. Bhumika, when we cover transportation of passengers and transportation of goods, we will cover your question on train tickets. Okay, so these are the services. So basically, when it comes to government services, specific services are specifically mentioned, port services, transportation, and things, and then other services are specifically mentioned here.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, in case of renting of immovable property, registered person pays under RCM. But sir, under in unregistered person in chapter 3 also it was written that he need not to pay any GST.
Unregistered person, right? Unregistered person, in that case, he will not pay reverse charge, but he will pay under, the government will pay under forward charge.
Sir, but the government does not pay GST, no?
They do collect. No, for commercial rental, if you see, I will take you to that notification. Charge of GST. There are two columns over there. Services supplied by the central government, state government, union territory, or a local authority to a business entity, excluding renting of immovable property. So we'll exclude under row number 5. Then 5A says services supplied by the central government by way of renting of immovable property to a person registered under CGST Act.
Yes, sir,
Then,
that is clear. That in a registered person, RCM will pay. But sir, for unregistered person.
correct. So when it is not said that it is there under reverse charge, then it will be under either exemption or under forward charge.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
since it is not there under a exemption notification, then it will be under the forward charge itself.
Okay, sir. I thought, sir, that in RCM only it was written that unregistered person has to pay an FC. That's why I was having a doubt.
So we'll have to see that RCM, if it is there under RCM notification. If it is not there under RCM notification, then we have to see if it is under exemption notification. If it is not under exemption, it will be under normal, regular forward charge itself.
Forward charge. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Government companies are also considered our governments, right? In case of service provided to one government, yeah. So in that case, the government companies are different from the government, because government companies are either government entities and things. So for the purpose of charging GST, the exemption, what the first point is, when one government provides to another government, they specifically said central government, state government, local authority, and union and territory. So government companies are not covered there. So government companies providing services, they will charge GST. So the government company provides service to another state. Okay. Say Tamil Nadu provides electricity services to Karnataka. Okay, the electricity is generated in Tamil Nadu by X company, which is government company. In that case, it is considered as government to government, right? No. When a government entity is different and government company is different. So it's a government company, so they will charge GST. But electricity is exempted product, so that's why it is outside the scope of GST. But assume that is not there, then the company who's providing electricity would have charged GST. So government company and government are different. Okay. Correct. Only government entity is exempted. Yes. Okay. Then there are some general public when who is a non-registered entity, then it will be exempted. Now there are some special services, whether it is exempted or taxable, we'll see. Adani provides electricity to Bangladesh. Will it be taxable? Yes, it will become taxable. But electricity is outside the scope of GST, so it will be exempted. Now, some special services, guaranteeing of loans to government undertakings. So these are all special services which is mostly exempted. One is guaranteeing loans to government undertakings or public sector undertakings. Now, public under sector undertakings, they have some control by the government, correct? Now, or a government undertaking also has some control by the government. Now they want to expand it, or there is a demand for their products and services. Now, when they are expanding, they need some funds or loans from the bank. Banker is saying, okay, I will give you the funds, don't worry. But just one moment.
Officer is audit company, proper force is enough to him. And I guess that but actually we are very down.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. He told he is pushing forward. It looks like some other person from the register office came. He requested that the possibility is there. We just should. So tomorrow there are some others are mentioned. Nadu pushing forward on that show. So that's update.
Raj Shekhar will do it. Huh?
Yeah, he told.
Sorry. Okay. So we're talking about other special services which are exempted. One is guaranteeing loans. So the bankers are ready to provide loans, but they're saying that you have to get guarantee from the government. So if you get the guarantees, only then we will do. So government will give guarantees, and they may say that okay, we will charge you something, because if we give guarantee and if you do not fulfill, we will be at a risk. So they will give guarantee and they will charge some consideration. That consideration is exempted, no GST on that. Then registration services required under any law. So any registration which is required under any law, that is say for GST, they don't take any registration charges. But for any other registration like FSSAI, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India is there, that will be accepted. On the registration fees, what is being charged, there will not be any GST. registration of company also, yes, that also there will not be any GST payable on that. So registration charges says that registration required under any law for the time being in force is exempted. Then any kind of testing, calibration, or certification fees. Okay, so safety check you have to do, some certification testing you have to do by the government laboratories, then it will be exempted. Then passport, for passport processing, whatever charges is collected, for visa processing, for driving license, birth certificate or death certificate, these are all again services provided by the government through their bodies. So all of this is exempted. Then tolerating non-performance of a contract. Any kind of toleration for non-performance of a contract for which consideration is paid in terms of fines or liquidated damages. Now, what is this? The government has given you a contract. You are a government contractor. Now, government has given you a contract. Now, when you have taken up this contract, you have to complete the contract on a timeline basis. Now, for various reasons, you have delayed it. So, as per the contract, it is mentioned that if you delay the contract, you have to pay a fine or liquidated damages. So, it is a consideration for the government, correct? So, on that, will there be any GST? It says no, because they are tolerating your non performance. So, the service is in the nature of tolerating non performance of the contract for which you are paying fines, but no GST needs to be paid again on this. It is again there under the exemption notification. Then assignment of a right to use natural resources to a individual farmer for cultivation of plants and rearing of life forms of animals, where the central government or a state government gives a land. I mean, it doesn't sell the land. It has its own land and it's saying it will give it to an individual farmer for cultivation or rearing of animals. Again, except horses, if they are giving some right to a farmer, okay, right to use natural resources to an individual farmer for what? For using it for cultivation of plants and rearing of life form of animals, except horses, will be exempted. So some land is there. Now government wants to give it to some farmers. They can give it, collect consideration, no GST on that. Only if it is to a individual farmer itself. Like similar case, you can see that when the government is giving its land for exploration of coal, exploration of some natural resources, that will not be exempt because there it is not the farmer who is getting involved. In this exemption, it is specific that if you are giving right to use natural resources to an individual farmer, only then it is exempt. Then deputing officers, okay, services provided again by the central government by way of deputing officers after office hours or on holidays for inspection or container stuffing. Like the government is having its employees. Now, these employees are given some extra work which is after office hours, and the consideration is paid to the government because they cannot pay directly to the officers. The officers are guided by the instructions of the higher ups, which is the again the central government. Now, central government employees will be deployed for inspection purposes for container stuffing on payment of merchant overtime charges. Like when there is a huge import or export, the central government employees are sent for inspection purposes. Such charges which are paid from the overtime charges will be also exempted. Okay. Then, sorry, services of inspection container stuffing. Then excess royalty charges, right? When there is a exploitation of natural resources, basic minimum royalty what you pay, that is may be liable to GST. But this question says that royalty on behalf of state government, if something is collected, okay, then that exemption is there. But this exemption is restricted to such amount as is equal to the amount of GST paid by mining leaseholders. So mining leaseholders, when they have to pay extra royalty, that is called as excess royalty collection contractor, up to the extent of GST, it is exempted. Then, service of rehabilitation professionals, everywhere it is coming. It is coming in healthcare services, it is coming in educational institution, and again in government services, because these rehabilitation providing services to any of these three parties is exempted. And services of old age, again your old age thing is there, that old age where up to 25,000 rupees consideration up where will be, again when it is run by the government, will be exempted.
Sir,
Yes,
in
Sai.
sir, in sixth point, you said that if the exploration rights are given to anyone in relation to natural resources, then it will be taxable.
Correct.
And sir, then sir, royalty for mining is also the same. Then why it is exempt?
Now, royalty for mining is not exempt. Royalty for mining, you collect royalty on that, GST is payable.
Yes, sir. It is taxable.
Yes, it is taxable.
Mining rights, if any industrialist is given for mining rights or any of the natural resources like diamond and all, it all will be taxable.
Yes, yes, all of that will be taxable.
Okay, sir.
So government services, more of this exemptions you have to understand, because there are a lot of exemptions. And services when they're providing, whether it be under, most of them is under forward charge, except renting of immovable property. When it is to a registered person, it is RCM. Otherwise, most of the cases it is forward charge itself. So excess royalty. So what they say is royalty is taxable, but the excess royalty I will read out for you to get the clarity. Services provided by a state government to excess royalty collection contractor by way of assigning the right to collect royalty. Okay. Now the government has to collect royalty. Now, how will they collect royalty? They have to appoint a agent there. To appoint this agent, the government is giving a consideration saying that, okay, I will appoint you as an agent. You sit at the site and check whether the exploration is happening correctly. So they will appoint a contractor. He is called as a excess royalty collection contractor, wherein he is, whatever government has to collect, that right they're giving to this contractor by way of assigning the right to collect royalty on behalf of the state government on the minerals which is dispatched by the mining lease. Like you said, any kind of minerals, it could be, mostly it is coal, iron, ore, these things. Now, they are paying a consideration to this collection contractor. When they give this consideration, this is exempted, is what they are saying. They're not saying that royalty is exempted. The consideration paid by the excess royalty collection agent to the government, or that transaction is exempted. However, at the end of the contract period, this excess royalty collection contractor shall submit an account to the state government and certify that the amount of GST which is deposited by these royalty holders is more than the GST exempted on the service provided to the ERCC. So he will do the monitoring. So this consideration is exempted, is what they are saying. clear, Hardik. 65B is this exemption which says that services supplied by the state government to excess royalty collection by way of assigning of right is what is exempted. They never said that royalty per se is exempted. ऐसा नहीं है.
Sir, sir, they are writing that the difference amount is also paid by the ERCC. So, sir, if there is any difference amount, like I am a person who is taking a mining right from the government. ERC, you are an ERCC. You are keeping an eye on me. And sir, the amount of GST that I have paid to the government, say it is 10 rupees, but the amount of consideration you have received is rupees like 5 rupees, then the difference in between 10 and 5 is to be paid by ERCC.
No, ERCC will submit an account and certify that the amount of GST which is deposited by this mining holders on royalty is more than the GST exempted on the service provided by the state government to the ERCC of assignment of right to collect royalty, and where such amount of GST paid by the mining leaseholders is less than the amount of GST exempted, then the exemption will be restricted. So they want to restrict that exemption, saying that the exemption shall be restricted to such amount as is equal to the amount of GST paid by the mining leaseholders. So overall, government does not want to lose. So if there is a shortage, whatever is the excess paid by these mining leaseholders, to that extent only you will get the exemption. And then if there is something which is payable, then the ERCC shall pay the differential between GST exempted on the service provided to the by the state government and what is actually paid, because they have to catch hold of this ERCC. Because if they don't tell the ERCC that you are just responsible and you don't have to pay differential, then they will get into a consideration with the mining holders, and ultimately government will not get the money. So that's why they've said that whatever shortage is paid by the mining holders, we will recover it from you.
Sir, any example like?
Yeah. So if you see the mining areas, particularly, they are there in some parts of Orissa, some parts of Karnataka, and certain parts are there. Okay. Now, in this places, generally the collection of royalty, how it happens is happens on a square feet basis, saying that we have given you this land, how much of the full land you cannot do it. So if 100,000 square feet you are exploring, so how much of your minerals you have extracted from it, you have to pay a percentage of that as a royalty. Okay. So mostly these companies will try to say that we have extracted less. To check that, they have appointed some contractors, saying that, okay, whenever there is load happening on a truck, we will check the weight and we will take a note of it. Okay. Now they that has to be controlled. So they have appointed ERCC contractors. Now ERCC contractors may get mixed up with these mining holders and say, okay, no, we got less itself. But the government will have control on what it will have their own geological team, right? Which will measure how much is the mines and minerals which can be extracted this from this land. Now, when there is a shortage, because on the government is concerned here with the GST more than the royalty, correct? Because on the royalty only GST is paid,
Yes, sir.
correct? So when there is a GST to be paid on this royalty amount, they've said that if you see, read this, exempted on the service provided by the state government to the ERCC of the assignment of a right to collect royalty, and where such amount of GST paid by the mining holders is less than the amount of GST exempted, then the exemption is restricted to such amount which is equal to the GST paid. So your exemption, you are ERCC holder, your exemption is restricted to the GST what they have paid. If they have short paid, then the ERCC holder will have to pay the GST.
Okay, sir. If my consideration which I am getting is equal to the GST paid, then it is exempted. If it is higher than the GST paid, then I have to pay the extra amount as the tax to the government.
Correct.
Yes. Now got it, sir.
Okay, that is on the government services 243, 243G, 243W. Postal is all gone. Then services by way of government authority by way of article again 243, 243G, 243W. Services again from one state government or central government to another government. Then one important point is in terms of supply of services by a government entity to central government, state government, union territory, local authority, or any person specified by the central government against consideration received in the form of grants. So, when any grants are given, supply of service by a government entity to another central government entity. So, when a government gives grants to a non-government entity, it is taxable. But when it gives grants to central government, state government, local authority, or any person which is specified by the central government, saying that whom will it specify? Like somebody was giving example that government entity is there, government company is there, and the government says you have to give them grant for operation purposes. So when they authorize that yes, some grants have to be given, such grants given to the government or a person which is specified by the government will be exempted. Apart from that, other grants will be taxable. Then old age home we have covered. Loan guaranteeing services also we have covered. Now the postals services by Department of Postcard, Inland Card, book post and ordinary post. What is exempted is postcard. Normal postcard will be exempted. Inland letter will be exempted. Book post will be exempted because these are all very, the stamp what you pay on that is very less. Those are exempted. And ordinary post, if the weight is less than 10 grams, it is exempted. Apart from that, everything is taxable. So when I say post, everything is taxable. Only these four services are exempted: postcard, inland letter, book post, and ordinary post, where the envelope's weight is less than 10 grams. Everything else we have covered. Yeah. So that is all on the government services. Next, if we go to service of construction services, very simple here. Services provided by way of pure labor contractor will be exempted when a pure labor contract services for construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out. So all kinds of services when it is pertaining to a beneficiary-led individual house construction or enhancement under Housing for All Mission or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So when you do any construction, is it exempted? It will not be exempted. Only if the project is funded by the PMAY, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, or also it is called as Housing for All Mission. Okay, when it is getting approved by that schemes, only then it is exempted. Otherwise, any private construction we'll see will all be taxable. Then what is the next kind of exemption is construction or erection or commissioning or installation of original works pertaining to a single residential unit. So if there is a single residential unit, which is otherwise a part of a residential complex, your individual residential unit will be exempted. but that apartment construction will be taxable. Okay. So only pure labor contract services will be exempted if it is under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or for Housing for All Mission Scheme. And if it is a original works pertaining to single residential unit. Then service supplied by electricity distribution utilities. Okay, that is also in relation to construction. When a electricity company is laying out certain electricity line, which is by way of construction, erection, commissioning, or installation of infrastructure for extending electricity distribution networks up to the tube well of the farmer or agriculturist for agricultural use. So, when they are a electricity distribution company is laying down new electricity lines. They're doing some construction, erection, installation in one line, and there are some farmlands in between. Now, these farmlands are saying that since you are laying down electricity line, we will need electricity till our land also, because in our tube well, that is the well, we need the water irrigation to happen. So you lay down extra lines till my tube line. Okay. So when this diversion is done, the electricity company says that you have to pay extra consideration to us because my line is straight. I have to deviate and give you some electricity. So I don't have the actual permission. Because of this extra requirement, I have to collect some consideration. So the farmer pays for this. Now, this consideration, what is paid, is exempted. Okay, so any kind of tube well of the farmer which is required and he is constructing something, then it will be exempted. Residential complex is taxable. Yes, residential complex construction is taxable. So please explain original works pertaining to single residential unit. Sir, any kind of construction, erection, commissioning, or installation of original works. Matlab, if you are constructing a new house, on that, if there is a single residential unit, that construction will be exempted. So to what? Services of a pure labor contracts only. Now, when you buy a building or apartment, it is not pure labor work, it is labor plus material. So that person will charge. So effectively, this is not an exemption because you will not give your material and tell the contractor to do the labor. In case you are providing all the material and you are involving the contractor one for only pure labor services, then it will be exempted. Now, this exemption is very important in terms of supply of TDR, FSI, or long-term lease of land by the landowner to a developer. So what does it say is that what is a TDR, FSI? First, we'll understand this. TDR is floor space, FSI is floor space index, and TDR is a right which you are getting for construction of extra floor. Okay. So suppose you had a land and the land is getting acquired through a land acquisition. Okay. So you are having a land and you are not willing to sell, but because government is acquiring it. Okay. So you have to sell it. So government will compensate for you. But apart from this compensation, they will give you this transferable development right, which means that you have a right that whenever you do any construction, if the government official right is for 3 floors, with this TDR, you can construct one additional floor. Okay, so you're getting a extra right. So when I give this extra right, I can sell this TDR to a developer. Okay, so TDR is transferable development right, which I get from the government for acquiring of my land, and this TDR is tradable. The name itself says it's a transferable development right. So when I give this transferable development right to a builder, because now builder will need this because he has a permission for 8 floors. To get that 9 floors, government will ask additional consideration. But I am having a TDR receipt. I will sell him at a lesser price than what he will pay to the government. Same is the floor space index itself starts saying that if the floor space has to be 200 square feet, with this FSI, he can construct extra floor space also. Or if I have to give a long-term lease of land to a developer, all of this will be exempted. So this TDR, what I'm giving to him for which he pays me consideration, that is exempted. FSI is exempted when the condition is that the constructed flats are sold before issuance of completion certificate and taxes paid. Now, in real estate, when we saw that we have this concept of GST on construction. Now, if the whole building is constructed and completed, then why you have to pay GST? Then it becomes a immovable property. So is there GST on immovable property or not there? Not taxable, Schedule 3, correct. Immovable property is not taxable. But when do you decide that a building which is under construction is a immovable property or is it completed construction? So the government has said that to decide that we will set up a point. That point is called completion certificate. When you get a completion certificate from the uh, architect or from the government saying that, okay, your building is completed and this is the completion certificate. Up to the point of time when you get the completion certificate, it will be treated as a movable property. After receiving completion certificate, it is an immovable property. So what happens? Up to the receipt of completion certificate, whatever flats have been sold, on that GST will be paid, and whatever is sold after completion certificate, on the GST is not paid. Okay, so the bifurcation for a real estate project is construction certificate, completion certificate. If the completion certificate, CC when I mentioned, that is completion certificate. If you have completion certificate in your hand, whatever flats you sell after that, that is not liable to GST. Before that, whatever is there, that is liable to GST. Okay. Now, constructed flats when they are sold. So, firstly, government is saying that when a landowner is giving this TDR or FSI, this is exempted. But the condition is that they are giving you exceptions so that you will give us the revenue. Correct? Because the government wants revenue indirectly only. So when they are giving this TDR exemption, they are assuming, they are at least keeping a condition that the developer will sell all of his flats before the completion certificate and pay the GST on it. Okay. But what happens? The developer may sell or may not sell. So to the extent which is being sold, fine. To the extent which is not sold, okay, then on the date of completion certificate, he has to ascertain this and pay GST to the extent of 1% in case of affordable housing and 5% in case of non-affordable housing for that flats which are not sold as on that date of completion certificate. Clear with this? How to get TDR from government? Hardik, that when the land acquisition happens, okay, based on how much of your land is getting acquired, the government decides the TDR, the rate what they have to pay, and the TDR compensation what they have to give in terms of the square feet area, how much you had. The government like take my land and give TDR. You can't just sell your land to the government and they'll give you TDR. They will, you will have to, they will give you only when it is obligatory for them that they have to compensate you. Okay. That time they will take over your land and give you a equivalent land elsewhere and a TDR. But the placement of your land is shifted. So that's why they are giving you the equivalent consideration for the land and the TDR. 17%, which 17%, Riddhi? It is 1% or 5%, not 17%. Because the rate of GST for construction is 1% or 5%. That way. Government takes a floor of a school for establishing bank. Okay.
Sir, they will take my land for it is an acquisition, obligatory acquisition. So, sir, the TDR which I'll get, that TDR can be used by the builder on that land only or in on any land?
Any land, any land.
Any land. Okay, sir.
Government takes a floor of the school for establishing bank. Okay. Generally, governments do not acquire like this a floor of a school. Okay? They generally acquire the land itself. Okay. But in your experience, if you're saying that yes, they take a floor of land, then it can be yes, it can be done. Saying that okay, we will take the floor and we'll give you TDR. That is also possible. Chapter 5 is not available online in study material. Okay. Just talk to Board of Studies, Anirudh. They will help you with it. Okay. So we'll take some MCQs now because there are other exemptions, but I think it will get overloaded with other thing. Okay. So TDR and FSI का concept एक बार हिंदी में बता दो. Okay. But I've explained this in English for the benefit of few students. I've only explained it in Hindi. So don't feel that this is only spoken in Hindi. This is explained in English. So I'm only explaining it in Hindi for few people. Okay. So टीडीआर और एफएसआई का कॉन्सेप्ट क्या है? जब आपकी एक जगह है और गवर्नमेंट उसको खरीद लेती है, क्यों गवर्नमेंट को चाहिए, जैसे मेट्रो बनाते हैं या कुछ रेलवे ट्रैक बनाते हैं, उनकी आपकी जगह चाहिए, तब वो क्या करेंगे, आपको पैसे देंगे, उसके साथ एक टीडीआर और एफएसआई देंगे। ये टीडीआर और एफएसआई का पेपर लेके आप क्या करोगे, आप इस टीडीआर और एफएसआई को बेच सकते हो। किसको बेच सकते हो? बिल्डर को बेच सकते हो। जो क्या करेगा, वो टीडीआर के लिए आपको रुपए देगा, पैसे देगा। वो उस टीडीआर से क्या करेगा, एक्स्ट्रा फ्लोर्स बना देगा। तो उसको भी फायदा हुआ, आपके पास जो पेपर है उसका आपको पैसा मिल गया। तो आप इस टीडीआर से क्या करोगे, आपको पैसे मिल रहे हैं, करेक्ट। तो गवर्नमेंट बोल रहा है जो बिल्डर ने आपको पैसे दिए हैं उसके ऊपर जीएसटी नहीं लगेगा, ठीक है। लेकिन कंडीशन क्या है कि जो भी वो बिल्डर है वो सभी अपार्टमेंट्स उसके बिक जाने चाहिए। कब? कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट के पहले, क्योंकि कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट के बाद जो भी वो सेल करेगा उसके ऊपर वो जीएसटी पे नहीं करेगा, तो गवर्नमेंट को लॉस हो जाएगा कि वो एग्जेम्पशन भी दे रहा है और जीएसटी भी जमा नहीं हो रहा है। तो इसीलिए गवर्नमेंट कह रहा है कि आप इस टीडीआर और एफएसआई के ऊपर अभी टैक्स मत भरिए, लेकिन जब आपको कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट आता है तब आप पूरा जीएसटी भर चुके हैं क्या, तब आपके पूरे फ्लैट्स कंप्लीट हो चुके हैं, तो ठीक है, वो एग्जिम्पशन आपको ऐसे ही कंटिन्यू होगा। लेकिन कंप्लीशन सर्टिफिकेट मिलने पर जैसे आपके 30% फ्लैट्स बाकी है, तो फिर आप इस एफएसआई का भी 30% जो है टैक्स पे करिए। कितना टैक्स भरना है? 1% अगर वो प्रोजेक्ट अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है और 5% अगर वो नॉन अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग है, ठीक है। Okay, we'll take some questions. These questions are not related. Okay, we'll take up those questions which is related. I'm a trader who is dealing only in tax exempt supplies. So is it necessary to register under GST if my turnover exceeds 20 lakhs? Okay, so even though the limit for registration 20 lakhs is there, but the important point to note is if you are making only taxable exempt supply, if you're providing only exempt supply, then you are not required to take registration, because there is a condition which says that, which we had read during uh, initial part, that if you're only dealing in tax exempt supplies, then you don't have to take registration, even because you're dealing only in tax exempt supplies. Okay, selectors we have not read, so second one will not be a relevant question now. Okay, third question you can generally answer: is service provided by way of vehicle parking to general public in a shopping mall exempted? Yes, exempted. Okay. But taxable because consideration is giving it, but it's to government, so it is exempted. Where is government getting involved here? It is to general public. No, services provided by way of parking to general public are not exempted. So whatever parking charges and all we pay, they are all taxable, not exempted. Okay. One last question, which is relevant to what we have studied. Ram is an agriculturist. He has stored sugarcane in a warehouse. Now he has taken fumigation services. Mal gonna pay under FCM, correct. It will be under FCM itself. No RCM will come here. Ram is an agriculturist. He has stored sugarcane and he's taken fumigation services from Gupta Pest Control, for which he has paid consideration of 6,000 rupees. Nancy, second one exempted. Okay, what about this one? Exempted. Riddhi saying exempted. Hardik is saying taxable. Shruti Kumari is saying taxable. So we will have to go with the majority that not he's not paid the consideration. Consideration paid hua hai na 6,000 rupees. That is agreed, right? For this he paid a consideration. Consideration to paid hai. Correct. So earlier it was exempted, but now it is taxable. Exempted earlier, but after the amendment, it is taxable. Fumigation services are all taxable. Okay, I'll take one more last question. It's a MCQ. Mr. Panduranga booked a Kalyana Mandap in Tirupati for his daughter's marriage. Okay, very, very confusing crowd. If you are saying B and if you are saying B, the correct answer is B, because renting of Kalyana Mandapam is taxable because the value is 9,999. Renting of rooms, the limit is 999, which is below. So renting of rooms is exempted and Kalyan Mandapam is taxable. The correct answer is B. Why confusion in that? A few people got confused. Okay, so we'll cover up the balance of exemptions in the next chapter and take up all the MCQs so that we are covering up the chapters. Okay, thank you very much.